What is up, everybody? It's me back again, your boy Jo. I hope y'all had a good Thanksgiving, a great Thanksgiving. Got to spend it with, friends, family, loved ones. I hope you ate plenty, drank plenty, and were merry. And I got to do almost all that. I didn't get to see my family this year, but I got to talk to them. I'm not much on Thanksgiving myself, but I'm a foodie. That's just a little something about me. I love food. But anyway, we're gonna get right into it. I'm back at it again with another versus, and as you can see, this was a viewer recommended versus battle. So I didn't know a whole lot about Mike Stone. This character, Mike Stone. This guy brought him up to me. Good looking out guy. Thanks for recommending this fight here. Didn't know a whole lot of Mike Stone or about who this guy was. Had to do a little bit of homework. And I thought to myself, since the guy's career spanned from about 62 to almost 1970, 1962, 1963 is right around the time Bruce Lee, he had already come here and he was teaching Wing Chun. Why not make this interesting? Because he had asked the question, who would win in a sparring match or a real fight? And I'm thinking to myself, well, let me make it interesting. Let's take, what if a pre-Jeet Kune Do Bruce Lee fought against a Mike Stone? Now, this is the Bruce Lee that was studying Wing Chun and teaching Wing Chun. He had not discovered Jeet Kune Do yet. It might have been in the back of his mind, but he hadn't discovered it yet. So that is what this battle is going to be about today, this evening. Who would win, pre-Jeet Kune Do Bruce Lee versus Mike Stone in a sparring match? Mike Stone was a martial artist himself. He was a karate. The style he studied was Shorin Ryu karate. Joe Louis, Jim Kelly are some names that you probably know or heard about. They also studied it as well. Jim Kelly's the black guy in Enter the Dragon, for those of you Bruce Lee fans out there. And for those who are not Bruce Lee fans or just new to being Bruce Lee fans, that's who that guy is. Joe Louis is another guy. He actually trained with Bruce Lee for a little while in the late 60s. Yeah, Mike Stone practiced karate. He got into it in 1962 after about 6 months. This was when he was in the Army. Excuse me. This was when he was in the Army. After about 6 months, he got his black belt. So he's a quick learner. I tried looking up videos of his fights online. There's not a whole lot out there about him. I mean, very little, if anything. The guy, he was also later on became an instructor. He also, what did he do? Oh, he took Elvis's old lady from him. He was an instructor. He taught, Elvis. He taught Elvis's wife at the time, Priscilla, and he took her basically from Elvis. So I mean, I thought that was pretty cool. Kind of a dick move, but still pretty cool. I mean, you took Elvis's girlfriend. I mean, that's something to brag about. But this guy here, he won championship belts. He won 91 consecutive fights. So I mean, this guy's the real deal. Most of his fighting has just been in the ring. From the footage I have seen, the very little bit of footage that I've seen about this Mike Stone character, he reminds me of a Tasmanian devil. Like, you ever see the Tasmanian devil in Looney Tunes? Where you see the feet and you see the dust cloud and you see the hands, the feet moving around, and there's a whole lot of yelling, and the finished product is, the person that gets ran through is left on the ground motionless or whatever. They got to be in like a full body cast. You get where I'm going with this. But that's what Mike Stone's fighting approach is like. And then on the other side you have, Bruce Lee. Like I said, this was a Bruce Lee that had just come over here, moved over here from China, had been studying Wing Chun with Ip Man since '56. Came over here, continued practicing it. He also started teaching it, and so he had not reached the point where he felt that his style of martial arts, Wing Chun, was very rigid, and he had to do, go in there and basically do a tune-up and redo a whole lot of things and throw things out that weren't useful and yada yada. So, in a sparring match, now here's the first thing here. This Mike Stone character, after 6 months, he got a black belt. That's pretty impressive. And that also goes to show that he's a quick learner. Who else is a quick learner? Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee is also quick with learning new techniques, even mastering new techniques. Bruce Lee struck me as the type of person that, some fighters, they go in head first, start throwing blows, and they basically, their whole objective is to put you down. And there are other fighters who will have the patience to examine their opponent. Basically, it's like, if you're going to draw a bath or something and you go to stick your feet in the water, just kind of get a feel of the water. That seems to be the type of person that Bruce Lee was. He's going to size up his opponent before he even does anything. Before he even does anything. And that's the kind of guy that Bruce Lee, to me, he strikes me as. So he's definitely going to size this Mike Stone character up. They're both stuck in their rigid styles. Karate and Wing Chun are part of the old system that Bruce Lee himself eventually he rebelled against. But at that time, he was not rebelling. Probably at that time, it was in the back of his head. These styles are very rigid. But this is all I know at the moment. And so I think just in a sparring match, for me, Wing Chun is more of a defensive fighting style. You play defense. And then whereas karate is more of the offense. Also, karate involves judo as well. Something that I don't think Wing Chun really has in its arsenal. It's mostly just standing up, being on your feet, being on your center, kind of planting yourself there and getting the other person to come to you. Whereas you have karate, you can use your punches, your kicks to keep that person at bay. You don't have to get up close and personal with that person like you would Wing Chun. Mike Stone is got a few inches on Bruce Lee. He's 5'11". Bruce Lee is 5'7". At the time, Bruce Lee was probably about between 150, 160 pounds. Mike Stone was about 175, I think, almost 200 pounds. I know size don't matter, in a fight, whatever. But in a ring, anyway, it's going to matter to some level. But who would win in a sparring match? And I think... Now, keep in mind, this is pre-Jeet Kune Do, Bruce Lee. Do not get all bent out of shape. But I think more often than not, Mike Stone is going to get the better of Bruce Lee. Here's a guy who is in the ring. He's actually getting involved with fights, even though in-ring fighting is not real-world fighting. Bruce Lee at the time, he might have had fights out in the real world, sure, but we don't really know. Bruce Lee was a teacher. So he's mostly just teaching, whereas here you got a guy who's putting it down in the ring. He's kicking ass. He's serving up ass whoopings, taking names, kicking asses. He's very quick with his hands, quick with his feet. He's going to rush Bruce Lee. He's probably going to get, you got to remember, this is not the Bruce Lee, the physical specimen that we know from, Way of the Dragon and Enter the Dragon and Game of Death and Fist of Fury and all that other stuff. He wasn't the guy we're not talking about the guy from 1970 when he was at his peak, This was a guy, he was just really stuck in his ways, believe it or not, at this time. Like I said, Wing Chun is more just stationary, getting the other person to come to you. Mike Stone's going to get him to run around, probably going to tire Bruce Lee out the way Juan Jack Man tired Bruce Lee out. If you remember from that fight, I did a video about it, address the situation. But Wong Jack Man basically ran away from Bruce Lee. He winded him, and finally when Bruce Lee got to him, he got him down on the ground, and he hit him a few times, got him to submit. But Bruce Lee was very winded, and that's when he had his epiphany, like, something's got to change. This ain't going to work out. But I think in a sparring match, more often than not, Mike Stone is going to take and overwhelm a pre-Jeet Kune Do Bruce Lee. The same is the case in a real-world fight. I think just in a ring, I would give it to Mike Stone 7 out of 10 times. I was going to say 70, 100, but 7 out of 10 times, Mike Stone's going to come out with that. And that goes for actual fighting in the ring as well. He's going to overwhelm Bruce Lee, I think. That's not to say, like, in a sparring match, if Bruce Lee were to size him up and really get a read from Mike Stone and come back, he couldn't win, because he could. Fast forward, '69 towards the end of Mike Stone's martial arts. Excuse me, man, I can't talk tonight. Jeez, I'm sorry. Anyway, 1969 towards the end of his career, Bruce Lee was pretty much at his peak. He had discovered Jeet Kune Do, put that into practice. He was a whole new person in 1969 than he was in, say, 1963. And at this time, this was Bruce Lee when he was the Jeet Kune Do master that we all know and love him to be. Now, could that guy in a sparring match beat up a Mike Stone who was past his prime already and he's at the end of his career? I think it would go something like this. They'd be in a sparring match, and Bruce Lee the whole time would basically be checking Mike Stone, basically giving him lessons like, don't do that, do more of this, but Bruce, coupled with his speed, coupled with his power, he's no match. Mike Stone's gonna lose. He's not gonna be able to touch Bruce. This is the Bruce Lee that has studied, boxing. So he's gonna be dancing around. He's gonna be ambidextrous, switching it up on him. Just in a sparring match, it would really be Bruce Lee teaching Mike Stone while kicking his ass, but teaching him a few things so he can become a better fighter. And in a real fight, who would win more often than not? You already know, Bruce Lee. But I think that's going to do it. I hope that answered your question, my dude. And as far as everybody else watching, don't be shy. Please recommend some verses. I will do some more verses. You got to give it some time because I got to do my homework. But no task too big for me. And I enjoy it. I love getting on here talking to you guys. But with that being said, I'm going to leave it there. And I'm going to get going. But till next time, love you guys. All the best. Thank you once again, my dude, for recommending that fight there. And till next time, take care. Peace.